Well, everyone, today is a special day. We get to talk about another Nintendo console, which is honestly one of the more perplexing consoles Nintendo has ever made, and this is actually the Nintendo Wii U. Now, on my third channel, I've been talking about a lot of different Wii U games, and I just love the Wii U console. And it's weird because although this console may not have sold the most, as a lot of us people, kind of know by now, this console is approaching 10 years old this time around, which is so cool. But also, the Nintendo Wii U had such a crazy lifespan and such a crazy impact on Nintendo in a good way and in a bad way that a lot of the Nintendo Wii U bits and pieces are still sprinkled out today. That in fact, some of the games that came out with the Nintendo Wii U, including obviously the new Super Mario Bros. U that came out for this thing, but also Mario Kart 8, which is rebirthed into Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, is still one of the best-selling Nintendo Switch games. It still sells a ton of copies every single year, and it stemmed from the Nintendo Wii U game, and it's so crazy. I mean, this console has a crazy history, and obviously we can't get into everything today, but I will definitely tell you, the Nintendo Wii U, about 10 years later, I think is still completely worth it in this day and age. Now, maybe you don't necessarily have to buy a Nintendo Wii U if you don't want to, but from what I've seen, the prices of these things have fluctuated so much it's not even funny. I bought a Nintendo Wii U in 2019, I think, or 2018 actually. I think I spent maybe $70, $80 on it, and these things have only gone up in value. They are sometimes selling up to $200, which is so insane for a console that came out 10 years ago, and for it, not even selling that well. And that's why it's so expensive, because there's so few out there that you don't really have too many options. And with this type of console, it was kind of like two consoles in one, but it was like two consoles in two. So you had the Nintendo Wii U itself, which was like the successor to the Nintendo Wii. It was the standard little thing you plug into the TV, and you pretty much go from there. You can plug in a disc if you want to. And this was Nintendo's first HD console, and it was actually really cool. You can display up to 1080p on this thing, which is technically full HD, which is really cool. But you also had a little bit of a gamepad as well, which this thing was the more perplexing part. A lot of people saw the Nintendo Wii U, and I guess they just didn't see the need of buying a Nintendo Wii U because they already had the Nintendo Wii. The Wii sold like crazy. A lot of people bought the Nintendo Wii, but with the Nintendo Wii U, it was a little bit different. A lot of people saw this, from what I understand, as an extension to the Wii rather than its whole separate console. But there was actually a lot of power built into the Nintendo Wii U, and the concept of the Wii U was so good that they eventually rebirthed it into the Nintendo Switch. And honestly, if we didn't have a Wii U, we probably wouldn't have a Nintendo Switch as the way we have it today. Now, again, the gamepad of this thing isn't really the most functional thing. It has a 6.2-inch panel on the front. It's really not an ugly looking panel, but you obviously have, the joysticks up top. You have the D-pad. I just didn't like how this thing kind of felt and looked. It felt very cheap. It did not feel premium at all. The Nintendo Switch feels much, much more premium than this thing. And even my PlayStation 5 or Xbox One controller feels more premium than this thing as well. So I wasn't a fan of the way this thing felt, but that doesn't exclude the amount of capability behind this machine. With the Nintendo Wii U, not only did you have the Wii U game catalog on this thing, but you could play all the Wii games on this thing too. And there were also some re-releases of some other games, from other consoles, I think, from other, genres that got brought over to this thing as well. And there were some new IP, Splatoon came out for this console. And I will definitely tell you, although this was kind of a strange experience for Nintendo for making a gamepad console with the Wii U, I don't understand what they were trying to do there. This was still a very interesting move from Nintendo, and I actually do kind of like their approach here. Now, this specific console, obviously in this day and age, I don't necessarily think people should go and pick it up if they're trying to play a crazy amount of games. You should probably go for the Nintendo Switch, or you can even go the emulator route if you want to, but the Nintendo Switch is probably the better way to go. This console is a much better console in every single way, but the Nintendo Wii U, when I pick this thing up this day and age and I kind of look at it, it is very interesting to me that this console and the graphics behind it, it's still so powerful. When I look back at a lot of the Nintendo Wii U games, we had, the new Super Mario Bros. U that kind of released with this game, which was kind of weird. We had obviously the, Super Mario 3D Land that came out as well, but we also had a game like Splatoon, for example, which was a really cool approach from Nintendo. And this was a very, cool, interesting game that they made. They eventually, made Splatoon 2, and now they're working on Splatoon 3. But that's another really cool thing that Nintendo did, and I actually did like that a lot. But the biggest pinnacle, in my opinion, there's two of them. There's Mario Kart 8, and there's obviously Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. When I look at those games and I look at those graphics, starting with Mario Kart 8, this was such a powerful game. It's almost rated as one of the best Mario Karts ever made, and I think the graphics of that game still look really good. They still hold up very well, and that's, the thing with the Nintendo Wii U. It was kind of ahead of its time, and it just was poorly executed and poorly marketed by Nintendo. I think when I look at a game like Mario Kart 8, and the fact that it's had this big of an impact on Nintendo, that they are still selling it pretty much the same game with, extra add-ons and everything like that for the Nintendo Switch, it's so crazy that, when you look at the DLCs that are added for the Switch, just the Mario Kart 8 tracks and everything that were added, that's a Nintendo Wii U game. We haven't even gotten a new Mario Kart for the Nintendo Switch, technically, and what's even crazier is the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. This game, a lot of people kind of forget, was not only for the Nintendo Switch, but it was also for the Nintendo Wii U. And obviously the graphics were improved heavily with the Nintendo Switch, I would say, but Breath of the Wild is still a classic game that you can still play on the Nintendo Wii U. The graphics of that game, in my opinion, it's one of the most beautiful games ever made. And for Nintendo to kind of make that game as one of the last consoles or last games for the Nintendo Wii U was actually pretty interesting. And I think it was a really interesting move from them. So I think in this day and age, the Nintendo Wii U, graphics wise, for the games that it had was actually very interesting. And you still had games like, the Wii games that you could play. You had Super Mario Galaxy 2. You had, the Animal Crossing that came out for the Nintendo Wii that you could play on this thing as well. You had a Super Smash that came out for this game as well. But I definitely do think when I look back in the Nintendo, Wii U, I'm not really thinking to myself like, oh, this console had, a crazy amount of extra games that were added. It didn't have like the highest graphical output, or it didn't have the biggest impact on Nintendo. But I think this console had a lot of cool games that came out with it. It had the Super Mario Maker as well. There were a lot of different games that came out for this thing that I'm just touching the surface. And I definitely do think that's the thing I look back at the Wii U, and I'm just happy that it got, certain games. And like I mentioned, certain games are still being updated to today. I like Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, but when I look at the Nintendo Wii U one, there's a lot of overlap. I love Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but when I look at the one on the Wii U, there's a lot of overlap. I love Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, on the Switch, but when I look at the Wii U, there's a lot of overlap. So definitely when I look at the Wii U, obviously it's outdated kind of in today's standard. But when I look at the games, it kind of speaks a different story. So this is like my 4th year talking about the Nintendo Wii U straight. And every single year I talk of, different things because I've just been spending so much time kind of revisiting a lot of different Nintendo Wii U games. And I just think whenever I pick up my Nintendo Switch or Switch OLED and I'm playing a game on there, I'm always thinking to myself, how much better and how much more powerful was this console compared to the Wii U? And when I think about that, I think it's definitely a more powerful console. It's definitely has more capability and more, features built in. But when I look at this, I just really hope the next version of Nintendo Switch and what Nintendo does in the future is as big as a leap or as, big as a change from the Nintendo Wii U to the Nintendo Switch. When I look at the, future of Nintendo and, with the Switch 2, whatever they're going to make, I just hope it's a bigger change than the Wii U to the Switch. I hope they don't make, a Wii to the Wii U. I hope they don't make that conversion because that's going to lead us into a position where we're going to have a couple years of really good games, but not a humongous catalog and just not that much development like with the Wii U. But when I look at the Nintendo Wii U, I'm excited about the future of Nintendo, and the impact that the Wii U had wasn't necessarily with the console itself, but with some of the games that were developed for this specific console. So I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.